to Resilience Brilliance, where we speak about resilience journeys and share tips and tricks how to build that resilience muscle, which is so important to navigate life's turbulence. I'm Jenna Taylor, resilience strategist and founder of Resilience Brilliance podcast and programs. Every month, I offer free live training on resilience with an open Q&A session. Sign up with link in the show notes or right above here. My show was born out of my own story of survival. After a traumatic brain injury, I couldn't walk, talk, or even remember. I had to start from scratch. Within months, I fought my way back, first to independence, then to writing for IBM Watson Health, and eventually rebuilding a six-figure career. My mantra became reclaim my life, and it is the heartbeat of everything I do. Resilience Brilliance is for anyone struggling with adversity, burnout, loss, or the weight of life's challenges. The show delivers inspiring stories, practical tools, and expert insights so you can overcome, rebuild, and reclaim your own life with heart, humility, and humor. Today, I am honored to introduce Becky Whetstone. She's a PhD with a marriage and family therapist and life coach specializing in marriage crisis counseling. And she's based in Arkansas, and she has developed a managed separation and intervention guiding separated couples with purpose and timelines. Inspired by her own marriage crisis, Dr. Whetstone created tools to help couples navigate turmoil. A former journalist, Becky has a new book, I Think I Want Out: What to Do When One of You Wants to End Your Marriage. And it is aimed to reduce marital chaos and foster relationships. And with that, I introduce Becky. Thanks for being on the show. I'm really excited to share your story with others.
Thanks, Jenna. What a story you have, though. Wow, that's amazing. And as you know, resilience is the thing that therapists value the most, to get human beings where they, we all get knocked down, right? But an ability to get up and become stronger than ever before. Life, I always tell my clients, is a classroom, and all these things that happen to us are where we learn, we grow, we become wiser and build compassion. So, yeah, what a great idea for a podcast. I am thrilled to be here and talk about resilience with you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's been episode 1's all about my story, but today we're going to talk about your story and how you became so personal for you. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your story and your journey and what led you to where you are today and the route that you had to take and the things you learned in your course of resilience.
Yeah. Well, in fact, I'm writing a memoir right now, and I'm actually putting it out one chapter at a time on Substack. It's called The Congressman's Wife. Okay. And I think in that book, you will not believe how many opportunities I've had to be resilient in my life. But the one story that caused me to write the book, I Think I Want Out, the one that came out in February, was that, I wasn't married to my kid's dad, had 2 little kids back in the 90s. And, he was, let's just say, not making it as a husband, and in many, many ways. And I would have pleaded with him and begged with him to, do something and improve, please. I'm barely hanging on. And I gave him all kinds of kind of warning shots, and he would put me off, and so eventually I lost hope. And then I entered into the marriage crisis process, though I didn't know anything about this at the time. So he came home from work. I told him, I think I want out, which is the name of my book, because that's usually how it goes down in some way, shape, or form. A person reaches a crux of stress where they can't take that person anymore. They say, I think I want out, and the marriage crisis begins. And so we went to the marriage therapist that we had gone to in the past. And he said, Becky, you're not motivated to work on the marriage right now, so there's nothing I can do for you. Do call me if you get motivated to work on your marriage. So there we are in one of life's most stressful events. And the professional has told us basically we need to handle it on our own. And we just made, a big mess, which is exactly what happens when you don't have professional guidance, when you're, basically flipping out, like you are in a as we say in Arkansas, you're very riled up, on both sides. The person who wants to leave and the person who doesn't want you to leave. You're both ignited, your nervous systems, and you start saying and doing crazy things and do these knee jerk impulse moves and creating a big, huge nightmare mess. And we ended up divorced prematurely, in my opinion. Looking back, there's so many things I can see, where we could have been saved, but we just didn't have any knowledge about it. So we ended up divorced, and so that's been like 30 years or something. And in that time, I've seen how it's played out for him, for me, and for our children. And so, loaded with regrets. Oh, why didn't we do this? Why didn't we do that? Back then, I was just a housewife. I did become a journalist after that. And then after I left the newspaper, I started going to graduate school in marriage and family therapy because I've always wanted to understand relationships, but I was hoping to become kind of a Ann Landers or Dr. Joyce Brothers with a column where I wrote about relationships. I was trying to get myself some credentials, so people would, uh, respect, my opinion rather than me just being a reporter interviewing psychologists or whatnot. I fell in love with the marriage and family therapy program and ended up going all the way. I was 5 years in grad school, got my doctorate. And so, of course, I had to do a dissertation, a one whole year to research and write a dissertation, and I chose the subject of marriage crisis. How do marriages die? How does someone go from, I just can't wait to marry you and spend my life with you, to, I don't ever want to see you again? Like, some stuff happened between those two, things. And the stuff that I found in the research was mind blowing for me. And it was stuff that I felt like our marriage therapist should have known and could have used to possibly for us to have a different outcome. And so, and then I see in graduate school that they don't teach you anything about when a marriage is in crisis in class. They don't talk about it. They don't deal with it. And so marriage therapists are woefully not unprepared for couples in crisis. So after spending a year immersed in it, and then I graduate and get my license to practice, I said, well, I'm going to use this research that I just learned and incorporate it into a model for helping couples in crisis and hopefully fill that gap for therapists and educate them on how to help couples. And so, I wanted to write a book back then 20 years ago, but I just couldn't find a publisher. They would tell me, oh, this is so negative, because it was about divorce. And they would go down, if you can save every marriage at the end, that's different. And I'd go, no, because it shouldn't even be that way. I mean, it's unrealistic. It's ridiculous to think that every marriage can and should be saved. So, I've been developing this marriage crisis intervention for couples. And then finally, I was able to put it in the book, and it came out last February. And so it is for therapists to learn how to help couples, but it's also for couples in crisis. And I'm getting so much incredible feedback from people who read the book and told me it sounded like I was describing their marriage to a T. And at least I'm walking them through understanding it and then telling them, okay, here's what you need to do now, and I'm normalizing the crazy feelings that everyone has during a marriage crisis. But the thing is, most people feel very out of control. And the key to marriage crisis is trying to get people to slow down and calm down so they can make wise decisions, the best decisions for their family. So that's how my marriage crisis, I made lemonade out of lemons, I guess, from my own marriage crisis.
Well, if we don't make the lemonade, that's not a good place to spend our life, right? We have to figure out what we're going to do to make that sour taste on a positive note, to grow. If we don't grow from the things that we are learning about ourselves and other people and how we relate to other people, then we are doing a total disservice to ourselves and everyone around us. So it's very important to
I
have that
agree.
spin.
Well, you've learned also, that, I guess when you have regrets, one good way to deal with them is to have something good come out of it, right that wrong so that this thing never happens again kind of thing. So, it's been extremely interesting and fascinating to me to delve into understanding this. But if you'd have told me in my 20s or 30s that I would be a marriage crisis specialist, I wouldn't have believed you. I would have thought you were crazy. But
So
that's
help
how
me
life
with
goes, right? Is the path meanders, and
yeah,
you never know
it's
where
not
you're
a
gonna
straight
end up.
line. I always joke in one of my other podcast episodes, we were talking about when we grow up, when we're little, we think that our life's just going to be, this, right? And then we're like,
Exactly. And I'm grateful that it goes that way. Looking back, I am grateful that it went that way. Because
yes.
you know, I really love helping couples in crisis. It's just extremely gratifying. And they're so thankful that I know what I'm doing when it comes to this. Because to this day, most therapists do not know. And there's refer people to me from all over the country. People refer their clients to me for marriage crisis.
How long, how long do you work with people typically?
Completely depends. First of all, people have different pocketbooks, and if you're going to work with a specialist like me who has spent a ton of money training, because it wasn't just graduate school. I have taken numerous workshops. I've studied with some of the most incredible world-class master therapists in their techniques and things like that. And as I've worked to hone this work. I'm not one of your less expensive therapists. But I tell people if you can figure out, see me as often as you can afford, we'll eventually get there. Like you don't have to see me every week. So
Hmm.
that's one issue. And the second issue is like how motivated is the couple? In marriage crisis, usually one person is very motivated and the other isn't so much. So, I need to finesse. I need time to finesse the person who's skeptical to see that maybe there is hope after all. So, it just depends on how long couples stick with the process. And I just recently started selling packages where you can buy 2 or 3 months to work with me. And I did that so that couples would stay in it as hard as it can be. Sometimes it gets hard and they go, I don't want to come back. I don't want to come back. But if you've bought a bunch of sessions, then I know you're going to come back. And
Right.
the thing is those are the ones that have the best results because they forced themselves to come back and our rapport got better and better. And the next thing I know, they're buying into this and they're into it and they're seeing growth and change. And it is just the most gratifying thing in the world. But it is cheaper than divorce at the end of the day. I just
Of
tell
course.
everybody what we're doing
Of
is
course.
much, much less expensive than that. And,
Less expensive. It's easier. It's less painful on our friends and our family. I mean, the ripple effects, your location, it's less disruptive. You don't have to move. I mean, it's just,
exactly. Keep your whole entire 401k. I mean,
yeah,
all that kind of stuff. So
right,
there's
right.
so many reasons to stay the course if your partner is reasonably solid. Now, all bets are off if one of the partners is severely mentally disordered, and abuse and stuff like that, addicts that won't go into recovery and stuff. So not every marriage can or should be saved. But if I get two, good people, many times we can finesse them into coming back and trying again. And then if they want to do that, very prepared with some marriage therapy skills that people find pretty unique and different from what they're used to. And I think it's more impactful than the average marriage therapy that you get. And just like anything, all the things I work from today are not things I learned in graduate school. They're things, like I said, when I would go to this workshop or study under this person or that person. So they ended up their work ended up being far more impactful, I found, than the basic models I learned in grad school. So, there's some really rich help out there if you can find it, like really effective, really great.
One of the things that I want to go back to what you said with the people where there was some pushback with one of the partners in the relationship. When it gets tough, when it's really hard, that's when our growth, our biggest opportunities for growth and change happen, when things are hard. And being honest, emotionally honest with ourselves is so important. And I imagine that factors into the effectiveness of your relationships, with that you have with your clients.
You know what really helps is taking your pride and ego out of the equation and approaching this with humility and the recognition that you don't know everything. And maybe you have a few things that you could learn that would really benefit you. And and I just sent a message to a couple this morning that I'm working with, and I said, because they have really, they told me like they can't believe what their marriage is looking like right now. They can't believe it. And I told them, this is because you are heroes, that you are willing to stick with it. And it's almost like at first they might be skeptical, what's going on here? But it's almost like the fever breaks at some point, and they go, okay, I'm going to let Becky lead me to the healthy place. And it's just like when they do that, that's when miracles happen, and it's so cool to see, but you gotta kinda drop your walls at some point and be humble and, be willing to learn, because the greatest marriages, honestly, are with people who have learned the skills. I mean, you just have to spend the time doing that. I'm sorry, everybody, but to have a good relationship is a learned skill like tennis or golf.
Exactly. And some days you go out and it's great, and some days you can't hit the ball. So it's a great metaphor for a marriage too, because some
Yeah.
days they're better than others, right? And then you've got the two people. You've got this person and how they're doing in their day, and then you've got this person how they're doing in their day. And then if they're not aligned, whoo,
Well, I'll tell you, if you can get a couple that can laugh at themselves, even when they're having a bad day, laugh it off and maybe joke about themselves, that goes a long way. And that's actually one of the predictors of long term happy marriages, if you are the kind that can laugh at yourself and laugh things off. We have a harder time with those that take everything personally. So I'm like, come on, stop, just, life, don't take life so seriously, lighten up and laugh at yourself. And if they can do these kinds of things, then miracles can happen.
yeah, yeah. Do you want to address your multiple marriages now? Like how
Sure.
long did it how when did you personally figure this out?
This is so funny. Okay, so just so everybody knows, because I know now everybody's like, wow, how many times has she been married? 45 times? Let me tell you guys, I've been divorced 3 times and married 4 times. Okay, so I am in my 4th marriage, and I've been married for 13 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And my memoir that is on Substack, The Congressman's Wife, is all about the 3rd marriage, the 3rd and last marriage to a United States congressman. So I spent this period of time as a congressman's wife. And so I've got all the juicy political details and stuff. But the important part of the story is that the divorce, he divorced me, and like he sort of basically kicked me to the curb after about 3 years, but it took us 5 years to get legally divorced, I would say. And so much drama happened in there, so much drama. And I about had a mental breakdown after this. And I was just starting graduate school at this time. And I'm so thankful that I was in graduate school when I went through this, because it was a great thing for me to put my focus on when I was probably having a mental breakdown. It's probably what was going on. Like, I was on my knees. And so I was going to therapy at the time, and I'm in therapy school, and I'm also still flying all over the United States to attend workshops with then that's always been one of my things is finding the expert in whatever subject it is and blowing whatever money I could scrape together to go learn from these people, you know. And that has just really enriched me in so many ways. But one of the professors at my graduate school was very into Carl Jung and Gestalt type therapies, which is, if y'all don't know, it's kind of an energy kind of therapy, like a hypnosis kind of thing. And learning the different archetypes and parts of your personality, like the bad part of you and the angel part of you. So, he encouraged me to find this shadow part of me because I was saying, like, I feel like I'm a smart person. I feel like I'm a good person. How in the hell did I end up married and divorced 3 times by the time I was 42 years old, 40 years old? And so doing shadow work, the part of me that was doing this to me, wow. When I got real with myself, I realized that I was sabotaging myself because I was drawn to certain kind of men and I would see the red flags, but I would overlook them and go for it anyway because of what that relationship was going to provide my ego, whether it be near power, like with a congressman, or prominence or whatever it was. So, and I promised myself I would not marry again or even really date again until I figured this out because I didn't want to be married 15 times, life. And I had children that would be that I wanted to do right by them. And so, I ended up killing my ego. I ended up killing my obsessive part of me that had to have this power and prominence and would sell her soul to the devil to have it. I learned to be okay with the simple life and to stop trying to claw my way into having this thing, which was a drug for me to have power and prominence. So after I did that and then started studying what it was to be a healthy adult and what it is to be healthy in relationships. Then I was ready to start dating and I was single for 10 years and got my PhD in that 10 years and became a therapist. So really, since I've been a therapist, I haven't done all that crazy, marriage and divorce stuff. But I figured out the puzzle and my own journeys helped me so much in working with other people whose ego takes them down in their relationships as well.
Well, and I'm
So,
sure it helps as far as people being able to relate to you too.
well, yeah. I mean, literally, in marriage crisis, you have a person who's deciding whether or not they want to stay married. Then you have a person I call the leaning in partner who doesn't want a divorce. I've been in both places. I've been the leaning in person and I've been the decider. And I know what it feels like. I know how scary it is. So I do speak from experience about this. So, I've had a lot of life experiences that have helped my therapy practice. I actually talked to God recently and asked him to have me have fewer life experiences. Okay, I've got enough now. I've been through enough things, that we're good now. I've grown, nope, don't need any more.
I love that. I love that. Let's go back to what you said you were single and alone for 10 years between your third and your fourth marriage. And tell everyone, how is time alone after a divorce a growth opportunity? So many times people feel like it's a shrinking time, but how can you what can you tell people so that they can change their mindset and embrace this as a real opportunity for growth?
Oh, wow. One of my favorite subjects. And, one of the things I'd observed about myself was I'd had one relationship after the other, after the other, after the other, and part of this was because I was afraid to be alone. Even spending the night alone in a house was terrifying for me for a long time. And so, that's it when you can't be alone. The other thing was is I had such low self-esteem for a long time that I didn't believe in myself as being a good provider. I was raised by my Southern family to be a housewife. I never grew up seeing career women. All of my friends' moms were stay at home moms. I thought that's what women did. Now my dad made us go to college so we could land a high quality man. And that's what he told us. It doesn't matter what you major in. You're going to meet a high quality man because he's going to want a wife with a college degree. And so I just didn't believe in myself as a provider. And so I wouldn't mind working or whatever, but the man was always the dominant provider. I couldn't have lived the lifestyle I was living without the man's income. So after the third marriage, two of the promises I made to myself was that I was going to learn to be alone and be okay with it. And I was not allowing myself to have any more relationships until I figured these puzzles out. And the other was that I had to be able to provide 100% for myself and my children. That I did not, I needed to live life without child support, without any sort of money coming in from a man or my parents. So those were two goals that I had to reach, and I reached the goals. And by the time I remarried, I think I'd been supporting myself for about 7 years, and learned to enjoy and love and cherish being alone. Okay, so and how do you do that? You do that by being alone. You get used to it. You get used to it. The fear goes away. And so later on, when I was studying what it is to be a healthy adult, and there's 5 areas where people get emotional disabilities. Almost all of us fall into this category of struggling with self-esteem. So I had to get that straightened out. Boundary setting, I had to get that straightened out. Being able to perceive things accurately, I had to get that straightened out. Dependency, that was the area I was really working on. I needed to be a whole woman able to support herself, to stand on her own so that she could take care of herself. Because when you are dependent on another person for your survival, you're putting yourself in danger. I mean, you just are. And I tell women, I don't care if you want to be a housewife, that's fine, but have training or education or something, certificate, backup plan, so if that doesn't work out, you can take care of yourself. But when we can't be alone, then we're going to get ourselves in some other disaster, you know, just to fill that hole of aloneness. And when you can be alone, you can be patient and bide your time and meet people who are healthy and discard the ones who aren't healthy for you. And then, be able to support yourself is so important, I think, because, you know, so many of the women I work with, they have to go ask their husbands for money. That is not a healthy dynamic to put yourself in. So I think, preparing yourself so you have your own thing going on, where you are good to go on your own and ready to engage in an interdependent relationship with another adult who is doing what you're doing. They can be alone, they can support themselves, they're good to go by themselves, but together you can have this powerful thing of enhancing each other's life that's not a parasite kind of relationship, that y'all don't have to have a partner, but you benefit and want to have a partner. So I think that I couldn't think of anything more important than being able to be alone and be able to support yourself financially. And so if you get out of a divorce and you're not there yet, those would be the first 2 things I would tell you to start working on immediately.
That's why I can edit. I had
Okay,
my mic
good.
on mute. Yeah, I can cut all this, no problem.
Okay. All right.
But you were saying something about I love my alone time. When like one of my single friends who doesn't like to be alone, she said, "Jenna, you do single well." And I never really thought about it. But yeah, I could totally. I was single a long times. I love that alone time, and now I share my life with someone, and we share a home, and now I like, oh, I get the house alone, like, it's like, woo.
There's no doubt about it. Like Wednesday nights, my husband usually goes to play golf with his friends, and I'm like, yes, can watch whatever I want on TV.
Right, right, right. So,
Yeah,
it's it's really important, and I'm glad that we spent some time on that for people who don't like to be alone because it's so rewarding. It's so fun. It's so special, and we are special, and we need to be able to spend time with who we are and appreciate who we are. So I think all of you listening, watching, please, if you're afraid to be alone, take it from people who love it and trust that it's a wonderful thing, and take Becky's advice and figure out how you can learn to love being alone.
absolutely. If think about codependence, because that's one of my special areas that I work with in codependence, and there's a lot of it in marriages. And the idea is you want to set yourself up as an adult who's good, pretty good, no matter what happens. So whether your husband divorces you or your wife, leaves you, or you're not going to have that dual income, or they have to travel and be gone for months at a time. No matter what's going on, you can be okay, you know,
Mhm.
that
Right.
you're able to weather whatever comes your way. I want you to not say, "Well, I'm okay so long as my husband's there," or "I'm okay so long as my wife, blah blah blah." I want you to be okay without the spouse, and then the spouse is like the ice cream on the pie.
Yeah.
Makes the pie better, but you would enjoy the pie without the ice cream too.
Right. Or the chocolate cake that you have come, like,
Yeah.
cooling on your counter. I'm
Yeah,
gonna be
she
thinking
knows,
about that.
y'all. I just cooked a chocolate cake this afternoon. You know why? Because I wanted one.
Oh, I love it. I love it. That's my favorite dessert of all kind.
Yeah, well, we're supposed to be really good to ourselves, you know? We're supposed to be having a good time in life.
That's
Life's
right.
not supposed to be like swimming upstream against the current, and I think if you
Yep.
fall into your purpose and start taking stellar care of yourself, then the current's going to take you, and life becomes so much easier.
Yeah, that's so true, and you use one of my favorite words, stellar. Love it. Good word. So
It
how
is.
do women it is. How do women find the courage to do what you've done to become an entrepreneur after divorce?
Well, I think that again, if you want to be an adult. Like this is one of the things I'm dealing with day in, day out, because what childhood developmental trauma does to all of us is makes us emotionally immature. We're like grown children who can't be alone, grown children who don't think they can support themselves, grown children who don't take smart risks, grown children who are hiding behind the hedge in life, going, I'm afraid to go out on the playground. And so part of your journey is to grow yourself up and, become an emotional adult. And emotional adults may feel uncomfortable sticking their neck out and going for things, but they do it anyway because they know that for the higher good of their life, they need to do this thing, whatever it is. And I can tell you, the times in my life where I've taken the deep breath and punched through a fear, I want to say it's always worked out to my benefit. It has never failed to be beneficial to me. Like, say, I asked for a job I didn't think in a million years I could ever get. But I just said, well, I'm just going to go see what I can do. I'd get the job. It's the craziest thing, if you assert yourself. One thing I learned as a journalist, is you can ask a person questions and they'll almost always answer your question. But so many of the people that I know are afraid, I can't believe you were able to ask her that. I'm like, well, yes, people love to answer questions. They do. Like, what, if you sit in your fear is what blocks miracles. If I want to know something, hey, I may go try and find the world expert on that subject and try to find them on the internet and email them or call them and talk to them myself. Why not? And you know what?
Hmm.
99 times out of 100, they're so thrilled to talk to you about whatever it is. I think the more you punch through those walls and you get over the other side and you see, you're like, wow, I'm like so glad I did this, you know. What that same professor that talked to me about, you know, conquering my ego, he would talk about uh the courage to punch through walls. And he said there's two kinds of people, the giraffe and the ostrich. And the giraffe sticks their neck out and the ostrich has its head in the sand. And guess who's going to win in life? I'm telling you, you're guaranteeing your fate if you keep your head in the sand, that nothing's going to happen for you. And life is waiting to happen for you. But you've got to be the giraffe and stick your neck out. And I don't have my giraffe with me right now. It's actually sitting on a table over there. But when I'm working with clients sometimes and I've talked to them about being a giraffe, they'll be telling me some old ostrich story about, "Oh, I didn't try, I didn't go for it." And I had a little giraffe appear on the screen like this, coming up from the bottom of the screen. And I go, I know the giraffe. Giraffes are winners. They get to do the things that they love because they took the chance on them, you know, just punch through that wall of fear.
Yeah, and one of the things that I learned when I was going through my divorce, before I went through the divorce, before I decided, before I announced I think I want a divorce, I went through, as we were talking before the show, Dr. Fisher's Rebuilding When Your Relationship Ends course. And I was the only one still married. I was the only one, like my husband at the time knew I was taking a class. He didn't know what the class was. He didn't ask me. I just said, I'm taking a class. I'm like, okay. And so I went through this class and it really helped me with where I was landing in my relationship with myself and in our marriage. And it gave me the foundation for me to not prematurely make a decision that wasn't right for our family. But when I finally decided that it was, yes, it was right decision to proceed with the divorce, I had made the decision and everything that was on the outside of my decision so big and I was afraid and I had compounded the fear. So the fear of the thing, let's see, the fear of the thing is small. No, the fear of the thing is bigger than the thing itself,
No
right?
doubt.
Yeah, we make it up. We make this fear so big. Like we couldn't possibly overcome this fear. And then, like you say, stick your neck out, punch through it. You look back, you're like, well, boy, don't I feel foolish. That wasn't as hard as it was, you know.
No, and again, if you'll just go ask for what it is you want, I'm telling you, like, you would not believe how many times people will say yes. It's just amazing. But it's true that the human being expends way more energy fretting and worrying and having angst about punching through a wall or having the conversation or going over there to, you know, get what you want. They expend way more energy on the front end of the anticipation of that than they do actually if you just went straight to it, just go on, just take a deep breath, go straight through it. You'll expend like 100 times less energy in the long run, you know?
Right, and
So
I think too, as it relates to you and your marriage crisis focus, when two people in a relationship, if someone's afraid to ask a question to their partner, that's a very that's right. I want to get there here. I'm going to rephrase that, and I'll cut this part out too. This is where my brain injury kind of comes into play.
but yeah, it's a very common problem, by the way, that people married and have kids and they're afraid to talk to each other about certain things.
Yeah, and we should be feeling safe in our relationships. And what I was getting at earlier was that ability to be forthright and ask and not be afraid to ask these questions within your marriage because if you ask the difficult questions before it gets out of control, you save yourselves and your marriage, which is a good segue to my next question. What are the 5 stages of a dying marriage?
Yeah, you know, this has been something that readers of my book, it has stunned them, and yet this the research has been out there for 40 years. It's just that Marriage therapists don't know about it, and it's not commonly written about in books, and so I put it in my book because when I first read it in the library in San Antonio, I was like, "Oh my god, why doesn't everybody know about this? This is amazing." Okay? And so, yeah, y'all, marriages die in stages, you know? Sometimes I hear love songs and they'll go, "Oh, I don't love you anymore." That's almost never happens in marriage that I don't love you anymore. Usually we still love the person on some level that we divorce, okay? It's just that you have lost hope for a healthy relationship with them. But the first stage of a dying marriage is disillusionment. And that's when you're married for however long and one day you go, "Uh-oh, I think I'm unhappy in this marriage. Well, I know marriages have ups and downs, so I guess I'll just wait a little bit and see if it's serious." A little more time passes, and then you fall into stage 2, which is called erosion. And that's when you go, "Whoa, this is serious. This is not going away. This could lead to divorce." No, I don't want a divorce. No, because and you think of all the many reasons you don't want a divorce, whatever they are. And so you keep going and now because you have not, and by the way, I tell everybody right there is where you need to go talk to your partner and go to marriage therapy right there. When you realize your problems are serious and they're not going away. And the thought of divorce has passed through your mind. But people don't usually come to marriage therapy then. And so then they will fall into stage 3, which is called detachment. And detachment is when, like, I'm so unhappy in my marriage. I'm really miserable, but I think I can keep going so long as I detach from my partner and start finding some activities away from my marriage that I'll enjoy. And so that's when people go back to school, they start exercising or starting new friend groups or start playing tennis or sometimes having an affair, just, anything to get away from the partner and do things that they enjoy. So that's detachment. And then if you don't think about that, then one day, we don't know when, um, you will hit stage 4, and that's called the straw that breaks the camel's back. And that's when your spouse does something one day or doesn't or forgets to do something. But it's something happens one day where you get this instant moment of clarity that I cannot be with someone who just did that thing right there. And then you emotionally disconnect in that moment, like emotionally write your partner off. And then stage 5 is death of the marriage. And I say death of the marriage part 1. I mean, we might be able to get your marriage back on track after that, maybe. But if we do, that person will not go back to the status quo and how it was. It will have to be a new and different marriage with the same person. So that's the stages. And it's funny because anyone that's been divorced and was the decider, you can ask them, "Did you have a straw that broke the camel's back?" "Oh, yeah, let me tell you this story." One of my subjects in my dissertation research, her straw was her husband used a coupon in a restaurant. I loved that story so much. And she said, "And he would tell me, 'I can't believe you divorced me over using a coupon.'" But it wasn't about the coupon. First of all, he never wanted to eat anywhere unless he had a coupon for that place. And to her, that was representative that he didn't value her. Like he didn't value her enough to spring for a fully priced, decent dinner somewhere, right? And so they were separated and he was pleading with her to work it out with him. And so she started trying to date him again. And by golly, if he didn't use a coupon in the restaurant, and he tried to hide it. He had taken it in the back and told the guy, "Here's a coupon. Don't let my wife see it." But she found out about it, and that was it. She divorced him after that.
That's a good story. I mean, it's so true. You think it's a small thing, right? The coupon, but it's not the coupon. It's a much bigger issue.
And he couldn't get the point. He did not get the point. I actually dated a guy one time who I didn't realize he was using coupons until like one night they go, "Ma'am, do you want anything to drink?" And I said, "No, just a glass of water." And my friend, he's a friend now, Roger, he said, "Becky, you have to order a Diet Coke." And I'm like, "I do? Well, I just want a glass of water." And he goes, "No, you have to order like a drink, like a tea or a Coke or something." I'm like, "Why?" He goes, "Because it comes free with the meal, because I got a coupon for a free drink." And I'm like, "God, Roger, pitiful."
That's good. That's funny.
It
A
is.
coupon. So refresh my memory. What was stage 4?
Stage 4 is the straw.
Oh, okay. And then stage 5 is the dying.
Stage 5
Okay.
is death
So
of the marriage.
the death of the marriage, part 1. So what does that look like? Can you go into a little bit more
Death
detail?
of the marriage is okay, so death of the marriage is usually when the person comes to their spouse and says, "I think I want out,"
Okay.
and
Okay.
they're in such a serious place at that time that they're going to make it clear that if we don't divorce, things are going to be completely different. And you need to go get in therapy or we'll go to marriage therapy. But if the things that caused me to be miserable in this marriage are not 100% corrected, I will not come back and I will divorce.
Okay. All right. Thanks for clarifying
They're
that. Yeah.
dead serious.
Yep. Yep.
They
I can
won't
relate.
they're not, as I say in my book, they won't walk it back,
Hmm.
'cause, sometimes people are like, "I'm done," but they don't really mean it, But when you're in stage 5, you really are done. You're done
Yeah.
with marriage part 1, and then you come see me, and we'll see if we can orchestrate a marriage part 2 for you. But, if you're a half-asser and you don't do the work, you will be divorced. I promise you that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's for the best, sometimes you're just he's a good person and you're a good person, but you're not compatible, you know? So, but, like, I don't want people to change who they are, That's not what we're asking from marriage part 1 to marriage part 2. But you're going to have to start being healthy and interrelating with your spouse. And, if you're the kind
Yeah.
of person that's been yelling at him, you know, then that will have to be completely cleaned up. And you'll have to learn how not to yell at people, those kinds of things.
Yeah. I want to go back to one of the things you said earlier, and it reminded me of when I was going through my therapy when I was step 5, right, in my marriage. And my divorce was final in January of 2013. It's 26. I just had my 13th anniversary, and I think I missed it. I think I missed my divorce. We usually text each other, happy
You're
divorcery.
kidding. My God.
But one of the things that we were talking about before we went on the show was we went we had trouble breaking up. We were engaged, we broke up. We were engaged, we broke up. We got married, and a year and no, our daughter was a year and a half, and that was when I was step 5. And then we put it together because I was like, I don't want to give up on this, right? And I didn't want to raise a child of 1.5 all by myself. And so he made some adjustments, and we were together for a while, and it was all working fine until it wasn't. And so anyway, I was done part 2, right? So I was stage 5, part 2, and we were going through therapy. And I said, our goal is not to reconcile. Our goal is we have one child. We want a divorce cordially. We couldn't be in the same room. It was very tenuous between us. And there was a lot of hurt on my side. Like I
Mhm.
was very hurt. And anyway, so we went through this therapy, and I said, our goal is to be able to co-parent and to be cordial to one another. Our goal through the end of this counseling is not to reconcile, but to be cordial with one another. And it went so well. I learned so much about him, and he got so much out of the therapy. I watched him grow. I watched him change and him get healthy right in front of my eyes. And so much so that the therapist, I said, And she goes, let me, nope, no. She said, let me, no, no, we hired you. How do you know what I'm going to say? I said, fine, talk. So she says, it's going so well. I think you guys should give it another go. And I'm like, I told you, we hired you to get us divorced, but it's going so well. All right. So we decided, well, if you're in, I'm in. I'm like, all right. So we went up to our house. We weren't living in the house that we had built. We had different houses in different towns. So we met up at the big house that we built together. And within 2 hours, the board game was like this, and he's yelling, and my daughter's crying. And I'm just like, and I looked at him and I said, I guess you're sleeping in the guest suite. And then we went to therapy the next week, and the therapist was like, well, how did it go? And she's all excited. And I looked at her and I'm like, Paul, you want to tell her? And he hemmed and he hawed and he hemmed and he hawed. And just for the sake of the therapy session, she said, all right, tell me what happened. So I told her, and she says, is that what happened? He goes, yep. And she goes, so you guys are proceeding with the divorce? And I go, yep. But what it did was, yes, we gave it another shot. The part two didn't work. But what happened was it enabled us, like I call it transitional counseling. It enabled us to see each other differently. We became each other's best friends. The moniker was best divorced husband, best divorced wife. And we helped each other when we went through a lot of difficult times with either related to the stress of our daughter, or I had a partner who died and he was there for me. And when he and his long-term partner ended their relationship, I was there for him. So we were able to help each other when we were friends. And that helped us divorce with what I call with grace. And I think we modeled a good model for our child. And one of how this ties back into you is when you were saying people still proceed with divorce after meeting with you, but it prepares them for divorce and to divorce amicably.
Yeah, that divorce is the best. I've been doing in the last year is helping oversee an amicable divorce because I had many couples I had worked with that had decided to divorce and they said, we want it to be amicable, great. And then the next thing you know, they go hire family lawyers and all hell breaks loose, because the family lawyers do not care about what happens with your family after the divorce. They don't care about the need to get along and raise kids together. So they just tear up the town. So I said, okay, well, I've got to devise a way for couples to amicably divorce without hiring family lawyers. So I created a plan and they negotiate everything that they can with me or a marriage therapist. I have documents I've created for a co-parenting plan that's all worked out where there's continuity between the two households. And then when it gets down to brass tacks, we bring in collaborative lawyers who are not adversarial, and they will make sure that all the legal things are the way they're supposed to be, and then you get an amicable divorce. And then I'll oversee the co-parenting and stuff for you for a while if that's what you want. If you want, probably your husband in that story that you told that was so cool. The therapist thought y'all were doing great because he was probably great because she was there, and that's what a
He
lot of my clients tell me it is, we have these great conversations, Becky, but only when you're there.
well, he
We
was
could
no, he
never do
really
this at home.
he really did grow. And then when we proceeded through the divorce, he went and he did a lot more therapy and growth. And I tell him and I tell other people, so I'm not saying anything out of turn here. If he'd have done the work he did after we got divorced, before we got divorced, we would probably still be married. But that wasn't the timing. And so it's much easier to be friends with somebody you like, right? Who's respectful and kind. And a it took the divorce, and he said, I'm working really hard. I don't want to repeat the same mistakes. So he used our divorce as a growth moment for him, and he did what he needed to do. And I saw that growth in him. And that's how we were able to not just be friends when we divorced, but continue that on many years later.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic. That's
Yeah.
superb. I love
Well,
it.
you know what? Thanks. Divorce is hard. It's hard on everybody. And it was so important. I'm so passionate about this. I'm like choking up. We didn't want our child to suffer because we couldn't get along anymore. Because our marriage wasn't working out. I told him, we're a family of 3. The divorce doesn't mean we're not a family. And we kept that family together. In fact, when our daughter was we took her to college and we drove her to college together, one car. And we were laughing and carrying on. And Erica's got her headphones in the back and listening to her music. And then we went and did another trip to check on her in college. And we did that together. So we really were able to be in that place where we could be together as friends, as parents, and be kind to each other and respectful. And I remember we went when we checked her in and she was signing off at her dorm room and mom and dad had to go away. We went out and we had a martini, or he had a beer and a martini. And we were like celebrating with these people and they were like laughing and like, oh, you're empty nesters now. And we're like, yeah, yeah. And then he goes, but we're not married. We're divorced. And they're like, no way. Because we had that relationship. So it's possible, people. When you say you take the ego out and be humble, that's what we did. We put our kid first and it helped
You have
us.
to
It
do
benefited
that.
us.
You have
Yeah.
to, I mean, you gotta grow up and be emotional adults. And
Mhm.
emotional adults control themselves and do the right thing for the higher good, even if they don't want to. Just,
Yeah.
in co-parenting. And co-parenting involves a lot of self-control and doing what I tell people, like, if you do decide to divorce, then I want you to put your kids first until they're raised, please. Don't bring a bunch of riffraff into their life. Just get them raised, put your focus on them because that's what kids want anyway. They want time with their parent. You don't want to go out on a date with you and your new girlfriend. They just want to be with you. So, I encourage people to keep the girlfriends and boyfriends away from them and, just focus on the kids and get them raised. And then you can do whatever you want after that.
That's great advice. Well, we're getting to the point where we should probably wrap this up, but I want to, we could be talking about this forever and ever.
Exactly.
Are there any last, I've got a couple of things I'm going to talk about with your website and your resources. Why don't you grab your book and show everybody what the book looks like and how they can order the book? I think I want out what to do. And one of you, what?
Wants to
Wants to
end
end.
your marriage. Yeah.
And where can people buy that?
You can get it at Amazon or Barnes and Noble or any major bookstore, and it's an audio, digital. And if you're interested in my memoir about how literally got knocked down and finally got back up, that's The Congressman's Wife on Substack. So it's all about relationships. That's my thing, is relationships. The book is also got lots of great information for couples who are not on the brink, believe it or not. I mean, I've had many people tell me that they learned so much about how to have a healthy relationship from this book. So check it out.
That's awesome. I'll have the links in the show notes and also right above here so
Yeah.
you can get that book. And I want to thank you so much for spending time with me today and sharing your wisdom and your knowledge with everyone.
I'm so
That's
happy to
wonderful.
be here. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. And until next time, I want you to remember that I do offer that once a month free training on resilience. The link is up there, and sign up. Also, be real, be resilient, reclaim your life. Ciao.